Well, thank you so much for joining us for our latest Viking Views. My name is Joel Gackle, and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Engagement here at Augustana University. My guest tonight is Laurel Prieb. Laurel is the Vice President of Western Operations and Special Projects for Major League Baseball. A native of Webster, South Dakota, he was also a student athlete here at Augustana before graduating in 1977. Laurel, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Joel. It's always a thrill to be on with Augustana University.
So you've spent over 30 years in Major League Baseball, and it's obvious that sports plays a big role in your life. Can you take us through where your love of sports really began?
Well, actually, I just passed 43 years in around Major League Baseball, so I wish it was only 30. I'd be a lot younger then. As you mentioned, I grew up in South Dakota, Webster, and around the time I was 9 years old, I fell in love with baseball. For whatever reason, I think it was divine providence that I was given a love for baseball and the Minnesota Twins in particular. And so I spent many hours throwing a ball off the side of our barn on the farm and had a lot of fun doing that, and just many memories, even just growing up as a kid and playing baseball. And as I say, really developing this passion for baseball that I really hoped and prayed it would be my vocation. And of course, like a lot of kids, I had the notion that playing baseball would be the best thing. And of course it would be. But I realized early enough on that I had nowhere near the talent to play this game at any sort of professional level. So by the time I got to Augustana, I had really chosen track and cross country as somewhat of my athletic vocation, and really tried to get a foothold on the business side of it and trying to get my way in that way. And thanks to Augustana's 414 curriculum, I spent my last two interims. The first one when I was a junior, sort of making my way around the country with a couple friends, a couple track and cross country friends. And for me, focusing on baseball and the administrative side, and met some people who were instrumental to me later on, such as people with the Twins. And then my senior year had an internship with the Boston Celtics, which, although not baseball, nonetheless really developed some friendships in Boston and got me somewhat more acclimated to just being around professional athletics. Came back, graduated in '77, joined the Twins, and from then on, I was blessed that we had a pretty good year on the field. The Twins did in 1977, which probably emboldened them that they could afford to hire me at about $1 an hour. And so I started with the Twins, and 14 years there, and 14 years with the Brewers, and now I guess about 15 years with Major League Baseball. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, wow. So let's pull that back a little bit. Can you tell us how you went from Webster to Augie? How did you decide Augustana was it for you?
For so many families, Augustana represents such a great family institution, and it was no different with me. My parents went there, my sister, my brother-in-law, cousins, aunts, uncles. So of course I was going to go to Augustana. I entertained notions that I would go somewhere else to perhaps run track or try out for the baseball team or some such. But I suppose at the end of the day, Augustana was always going to be my destination. And I'm certainly blessed that it was, because I can't look back and imagine anywhere that would have been better for me to attend than Augustana.
Can you think through who the one person was, or maybe a couple of people who had the greatest impact on your life while you were here at Augie?
Well, professor-wise, I suppose James Lindbergh in the religion area was just an inspirational person to me. He went on to go back and taught at Luther Seminary for years after he left Augustana. But James Lindbergh was a very wonderful and inspirational person in my life there. as was somebody who just retired a year ago, Sandra Looney, out of the English area, English department. And Sandra was my first advisor, and she was just wonderful. I think anybody who had her as a professor could not help but just adore and her teaching style and find her inspirational in so many ways.
Now you've returned to serve on the board for Augie. What has Augie meant to you?
You know, it feels like home when I'm there. One of the best things about being on the board, many good things, reconnecting with friends who are from my college, from my days of going there, now on the board and whatnot. But a great thing about being on the board is that I have not lived near Sioux Falls since I left Augustana. And so being on the board for now 12 years has given me the opportunity to get back there. And I think for anybody, life is busy and you get caught up with whatever you're doing. And unless you've got something that somewhat forces you to go back to an area, go back to an institution, it's hard to find the time to do it. You're always busy with something else. And so coming back to Augustana on an annual basis or twice a year, 3 times a year, just helps me to revisit all the great times when I was there and also what it meant for me. As I say, in many ways, it's home. And because my family, so much of my family went there, it feels like home. And that's a great feeling to have.
So let's go back. You mentioned that you got an internship with the Boston Celtics. Now, how did a kid from South Dakota land an internship with the Boston Celtics when probably everyone throughout New England was hoping they would get that internship? How did that work for you?
I suppose, again, right place at the right time. And I credit just somewhat divine providence in helping me to get some things along the way that I probably had no right to get. But I also credit a presence at Augustana for that. John Thomas, who has done so many things at Augustana, now retired and in the Twin Cities. But at the time, John Thomas was Augustana's assistant basketball coach. And John was a tremendous basketball player at South Dakota State in his days, was drafted by the Celtics and impressed Celtics personnel, did not make the team after he was drafted and went to camp and whatnot, but he impressed people and they remembered him. And so when I asked John if he wouldn't mind reaching out to the Celtics, he was very kind to do so. And I'm sure it was through John's intervention that I had a shot to go there. And it was just a tremendous couple months. They were still in the old Boston Garden. And Tommy Heinsohn, for those who are basketball historians, Tommy Heinsohn was the coach. A Hall of Famer, John Havlicek, was still a big presence with the Celtics. JoJo White, Dave Cowens. They just had the remnants of some of their great teams were still there. And it was just a magical experience to be there.
Now, following graduation, you said you began your chapter with the Twins. Can you take us a little bit through your journey with the Twins and what that looked like for you?
I was an intern in the PR side of things with the Twins. And it was really a fun summer that first year because it was really the year of Rod Carew. Rodney was, of course, a Hall of Fame career as he had, and 1977 was his best year. He hit 388, was flirting with the 400 average, which of course nobody has hit over 400 since 1941, but he was flirting with it in 1977. And so he was a big presence on the team. And the Twins were a pretty good team. We didn't have enough pitching. We fell out of the race in September, but we were around first place going into September. And there were just so many parts of that summer which were just a lot of fun. In fact, one thing I remember, of course, now living here in New York City, but the first time I was ever in New York was I came with the team in that late summer, that first late summer, playing the Yankees, who would go on to win the World Series that year under Billy Martin. I had never been in New York before. And so coming in after a night game in Bloomington and flying here, and then the next afternoon taking the bus with the team to Yankee Stadium, and the first time seeing the field, walking the tunnel down into the dugout, I thought I had died and went to heaven. I mean, it was just, I think, a memory from that summer, that first summer, that was just so good. And from there, I spent the next few years in public relations with the Twins. And then we hosted the All-Star game at the Metrodome in 1985. And I was chosen to be the coordinator for the All-Star game, working with the commissioner's office, which is kind of fun. Peter Ueberroth was in his first year as commissioner of baseball, coming off being the head of the Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles. And it was a great experience. We, in fact, had the first home run hitting contest. The first home run derby was that particular All-Star game period, 1985 at the Metrodome. And then after that year was over, spent 3 years as traveling secretary for the club, which is really a kind of a wonderful job for a single guy, as I was at the time, of really shepherding the team around the country and really making all the travel arrangements and just somewhat being there as a troubleshooter. And doing that for 3 years, with the middle year of that being the World Series championship for the Twins in '87. I look back at that in 1987. It's just so wonderful to be with the team from the first day of spring training to the Rose Garden, as it turned out at the end of October, was really, really tremendous. And then segued into the business side of the Twins for a couple of years before moving on to the Brewers in 1991.
So what's one memory that stands out from that memorable 1987 season?
I suppose it's looked at quite a bit, and it really was special when our team beat the Tigers to win the American League title in Detroit. And it was on a Monday, and flying back to the Twin Cities on that Monday night. And while we're in the air, and the guys were tired, and the World Series is coming up and wanting to get home. And while we were in flight, we got word that we were needing to take a couple buses with the team back to the ballpark at the Metrodome, which did not make a lot of guys very happy because they were tired and wanted to go home. And for a lot of them, their cars were at the airport, at the charter terminal. So if we're going to go to the Metrodome, it means they were going to have to go back to their cars. So you can see it wasn't like a great feeling about doing it. But once we landed, and the enthusiasm on the ground, again, this is like 10:30, 11 o'clock on a Monday night. And we would taking the buses downtown along Crosstown and then 35W, and you'd go under the freeway walkways, and they'd be lined with people over the top with signs and placards, and then getting downtown, and it seemed like rush hour on a regular weekday afternoon. They were just jammed with people, and going into the Metrodome and walking in, and the place is packed with 55,000 people. Again, on a Monday night, doing nothing but coming out to say hello to the players. And they were driven to tears. It was a very emotional thing to see our players in that mode. And I think just an outpouring of love for the players, and I think for the players to the fans, and was one of those moments that really exemplified for me the great joy of sports, that can be such unadulterated joy among people. There's very, very little else in this life that will bring people together in such a pure, joyous way than sports. And that really exemplified it in a huge way.
Very cool. So you mentioned after that you worked for 14 years with the Brewers, mostly on the business side. How do you transition from the Brewers to working for the Major League Baseball office?
It was, so I was there with the Brewers, and we had some good years and really a lot of fun there, including the construction of a new ballpark there, going from County Stadium to Miller Park. and just a fabulous ballpark. And it had some pain along the way, as all ballparks have their political pain that's associated with them. And so we went through that episode, but it all worked out. And with a ballpark that now has just been a jewel of a place in Milwaukee. So then came 2005, and the club was sold to new owners. And I just felt, in fact, Mark Attanasio, who now owns the Brewers, was very kind and asked if I wanted to stay on. I don't know if he meant it or not, but I appreciated him asking. But it was certainly time to move on, and had an opportunity to open an office for Major League Baseball in Phoenix as Western operations, with the thought being that at the time that we needed to make the world a little smaller for the teams in the West, that sometimes they feel a little bit forgotten, and to do some business initiatives and to pay attention, to have somebody on the ground to visit those clubs and hear their issues and transmit them back to Major League Baseball was something that we tried to do, among other things. And so it was there for about 11 years, and a wonderful time just connecting with teams in the West and meeting that many more great friends in baseball.
So what also falls under the special projects aspect of your role?
Well, currently, a couple things that I probably spend most of my time on is that I oversee all the official scores in baseball. So those are every game that is played, to give a brief summation of that, has an official score who files the official record, if you will, of the game that's played, and makes the decisions on, is it a hit or an error, a wild pitch or a pass ball, is that run earned or unearned? So all those kind of questions the official score makes. And then, as I say, he files the official report of the game after the game is over. So we have about 3 of those in every major league market. So I have a flock of about 90 official scores that I stay in communication with. And it's been a little bit more of a fun challenge this year because of what has happened with the pandemic. We have tried to really minimize the number of people in the ballpark. And that even includes the official score, which who is a person that, again, with the official record being kept, you'd think if anybody would be at the ballpark, it'd be the official score. And the importance of that role is not minimized, but neither is the health and safety guidelines that we're really trying to pay attention to and minimize the exposure for people there. And so official scorers have had to learn their job remotely by various online tools that we've supplied them. And so that's been an interesting ride, but we seem to be getting through it okay. So deal with the official scores a lot. And I'm also an advisor to our internal charity at baseball, the acronym of BAT, the Baseball Assistance Team. And we give out grants to people in the baseball family who have fallen on tough times and need some help getting up and getting back on their feet. So whether they're former players or umpires or scouts or front office people, and we go back a long ways. We still help some widows of former Negro League players who are continuing to still be with us, thankfully, and we help them as well. So we've got great support of the major league players with that, great credibility with the players, and so we've got that role going as well.
Very cool. Now, you had mentioned official scores, batting 400 in 1941, hitting 61 homers in 1961. Baseball is a game of tradition. It seems unlike any other sport of tradition. Yet, you've seen some major changes in your time, whether it's interleague play, wild card, streaming, video review. What stands out amongst all the changes in your time in Major League Baseball?
Well, I'd have to say the interleague play and the expansion of the wild card, the expansion of the postseason were major changes for a sport that for the longest time has been so traditional And it's a strength of ours that when you make those kind of changes and you get a lot of howls of protest from fans and media who think that you are just going down the wrong road, I guess you're never quite sure how it's going to play. But both of those have played well. Both the wild card expansion and interleague play has done very well. You know, it's going back to the tradition thing, I suppose, particularly with baseball, which, you know, you go back in the history of the country, back in the 30s and the 40s, the three big sports in America would be baseball and boxing and horse racing. And so over the course of time, of course, boxing and horse racing have fallen off to be somewhat niche sports. And of course, professional football, professional basketball, in some ways, you know, college sports is right there as well. Hockey has its place, but, you know, we continue to be with what was the big sports back decades and decades ago. And when it comes to looking at the future, you know that you do need to stay contemporary. You have to make changes. And sometimes we've been accused of being a little slow making changes, and perhaps we are at times, but on the other hand, tradition has been one of our strengths. It's that it's also important that remember that although history and tradition is one of our strengths, you can't stay there all the time or you will drown in tradition. That unless you make changes and stay contemporary, you will go away over the course of time. So as we look to the future, some of the changes we contemplate now, and this year is a little bit odd, of course, because of the pandemic, but one of the big changes we've made in Major League Baseball this year is something we've done in the minor leagues the last 3 or 4 years, and that's in extra innings, starting every half inning with a runner on second base, which I think in any other year we would have been battling a lot of criticism for messing with that part of the game. But this year, I think it's probably a little easier to do those kind of things because everybody knows this is such a strange year in so many respects that anything we can do to just keep the game going right now and get through this, this unique 2020 season is okay.
Yeah, you mentioned it's completely unique, from starting extra innings with a runner on second to 7-inning doubleheaders to a 50-game season. What has really surprised you about the game this year?
You know, I'm somewhat surprised, being a traditionalist myself. I go back a long way, just even back to the barn, throwing the ball off the barn. But I'm somewhat surprised that I have come to like the automatic runner at second base. I didn't think I would, just because it runs against my grain. But personally, that's one that I find somewhat embraceable. I guess I'll assess it, again, not that my feelings mean anything to anybody except myself, but at the end of the season, I'll think a little bit more about it. You know, one rule that I thought would be a little bit more impactful, but perhaps it's because of everything else going on. We also now, for relief pitchers, have a 3-batter minimum, that a relief pitcher has to face 3 batters or end an inning before he can be taken out. And you know, during the course, of course, we've only been playing about 3.5 weeks now, but that rule, I don't even hear anything about it. It's not as though it ever even gets noticed or mentioned, frankly. But again, the automatic runner rule, I think might have some traction. We'll see.
The moment the first COVID positive test happened with Rudy Gobert in the NBA, that changed professional sports everywhere. Last week, Teresa Resch talked with us a little bit about what happened from the Raptors side, kind of looking back. What did it look like from the Major League Baseball side, looking back in spring training, when you realized the world was going to look different?
I think, like everybody else in the world, whether they're in sports or not, you're just so taken aback at first they're almost paralyzed because you can't believe it's happening. And we have some really smart people at our place. Well, all sports do, all businesses do. And they've been working, a lot of people at our place have been working nonstop to try and make a season out of this. And let's face it, for a long time, finally we got to the point of being able to start the season in late July. But for some time, there was a lot of doubt, skepticism that the season would ever start. And that applied to basketball and hockey as well. And they've been very successful with the bubbles that they've been doing. For various reasons, it wasn't possible for us to do that kind of concept in baseball. And we've had some bumps along the way. Certainly we've had two clubs that have missed a fair amount of the season. Now they're trying to catch up with games. And we have had a couple other bumps as well. But, I suppose to your question, it's just I was impressed that we and the other leagues were able to mobilize as quickly as they could, as well as the players, to take account of where we're at, the seriousness of the situation, and to put something together that we could get the sports going, to give a good deal of enjoyment to sports fans, and whether they be baseball, hockey, basketball, and of course with football coming up and their own set of challenges ahead of them. But I think in a time like this, it's certainly important to try and give fans and America some semblance of enjoyment with what sports can bring.
Yeah, as a fan, I can say I'm just thrilled that sports are back. And I think I'm even thrilled reading the paper with how Cleveland itself kind of policed their players, saying we need to take it upon ourselves to make sure we're safe this year. So I'm thrilled. We're going to close with a little bit of rapid fire for you here. So what is the best game you have ever seen in person?
I'd have the first one, July 31st, 1965. I was 9 years old. Twins beat the Orioles in 11 innings, 2-1. And it was a magical, transformative day for me. So I'll go with that.
Okay. Many people have a favorite food or a favorite meal from their time at Augie. Does one stand out for you?
Favorite meal, Augustana. Let's see. Boy, you got me with that one. I've got to, I think I had a lot of soft serve ice cream in the huddle. A lot of it.
Good.
So got to go with that.
As a kid, who was your favorite baseball player?
First favorite player, Jimmy Hall, who was center fielder for the Twins in the mid-'60s. Hit 33 home runs his first year as a player in 1963. So I'll give you that tidbit. But yeah, he was my first favorite.
If you hadn't gone into baseball, what would you be doing right now?
Probably would have tried to be a broadcaster.
Okay. What is your favorite thing to do in New York City?
Running in Central Park.
Yeah. Okay. And then one question that I got from last time, what advice do you have for someone who wants to start a career in professional sports?
Certainly try to get to know as much about the subject matter as you can, but I'm a big believer in relationships and reaching out and not just sending emails, because so many people, we all get a million emails, and so it's hard to cut through the clutter, but sending letters, that archaic form of communication that actually can make an impact because people don't get that many letters anymore, and meeting people in person. You have to accumulate relationships. Very important.
Well, Laurel, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It has been absolutely an honor for me.
Joel, thank you. This is always fun. Go Vikings.
Right. Go Vikings. So for those of us who joined us tonight, next week we will be interviewing alumnus Brendan Plack. He's the Senior Vice President of Public Policy and Government Affairs for the NFL. Thanks for joining us and have a great night.